Philip Franks. I'm the founder and creator of the Franks Report, and this is my Away from the Charts session. This is basically where we get out of the suits, get away from all that polished and stuff, as far as videos and all that stuff like that, and just have a real conversation about trading and just sharing just some thoughts on retail trading, things that can help, words of wisdom, those kinds of things. My last two videos I talked about, regulating ourselves and those kinds of things and tools to help with that. And I think another thing that people, at least beginner retail traders, talk about or always ask about is, which brokerage should I use? Which brokerage? Who should I use? And my response to that would be the one that works best for you. And that's not me dodging the question, that's simply the truth. You'll find that successful retail traders, or at least experienced retail traders, they specialize, they tend to specialize. There's just something that speaks to them, something that they can naturally understand or follow. Maybe they're really good at, blue chip stocks, those big companies, things like that are well known. Maybe they're good at futures contracts. Maybe they're good at certain commodities like wheat, corn, cattle, some chase oil. It just depends. You have cryptocurrency. That's a whole other thing now. So when you look at those kinds of securities, or in other words, these things that we trade, you got to find the brokerage that works best for you. What is your strategy? Do you execute high frequency trades? Do you do a lot of trades? And a lot of that usually comes from automation, but do you do a lot of trades? Well, if that's the case, if you're getting charged on every single trade, that can add up. There are some brokerages that will just charge, this is our fee for the month or whatever it is, right? But if you're doing high frequency trading, getting charged per trade can add up. If you are the kind of trader that uses a strategy where you maybe do 1, 2, 3 at most trades in a day, then it probably is better for you to pay commissions to the brokerage for those trades, because you don't trade that, you're not placing a ton of trades in a month. You are tactically striking those windows to place trades. So you don't need a flat rate or things like that to get some kind of cost savings. So I think when you're looking at a brokerage, just ultimately, and I went straight to money, because that's, when you trade, it's all about money, right? But the true barrier is, when working with a brokerage, who has the lowest hurdle for you, whether it be by price or commission structure fees, access to what you want to trade in. Maybe some brokerages only do CME, and your S&P 500, and stuff like that, but you may not have access to certain commodities or certain currencies and those kinds of things. So you got to look at, okay, what does this brokerage allow me to trade? What does this brokerage charge me to trade? And are they reputable? And what is the ease of access of getting my money? That's another thing that people forget about. They're so focused on getting set up and getting going, things like that, that they're not aware of the rules. It's easy to dump money in. These brokers are more than happy to take your money, your investment capital. But when it comes time to reclaiming it for you, like, hey, I've made money, I want this, all of a sudden you hit all these barriers, right? And you really need to do your homework on that. There are certain rules, depending on where you live and things like that. Like, for example, let's talk about like Trade-A-Bait/Ninja Trader, right? If you had a personal account and you put money into it. Well, generally, and and there's specific details here, but let's say I added money into that account via my debit card, bank account, whatever. Well, I can't pull that money out for 60 days, you know? And so if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna put this in and get a quick buck and get out, I'm betting it all in black, which again, trading's not betting, it's not gambling. But if that was your thought, well, guess what? You're not getting it. The U.S. does a pretty good job about trying to get in the way of those who would launder money and things like that. And so they have to have time for it to sit there and make sure people aren't just trying to launder money and other, less legal and scrupulous activities. So be mindful of that, You need to know the rules. Not only in your wherever jurisdiction you live and things like that, country, state, whatever. But you also need to know what the rules are for your specific brokerage, because that will affect your decision, right? Things to think about. Also, hey, I just, let's say you want to get in because you think Tuesday is going to be hot, and you try to transfer money to your brokerage account. So you can do that. Well, unfortunately, your brokerage account is not going to have it active in your account for, they say it takes them 2-3 days, business days or something like that, or 5 business days before it gets cleared and put into your actual trading account to use. And you're like, I just missed my window. You need to know these things ahead of time because that's going to affect your strategy. And some of that really, it comes down to the amount. If you're just throwing in $500, $100 or whatever, some of these brokerages, it's 24, 48 hours, right? And it also depends on how you send it. Is it ACH? Is it a wire? Wire is always the fastest. A little more complicated because you need all the details, but wiring to your brokerage, wiring money, is always the fastest way to get money into that account. Everything else takes time. But like I said, $100, $500, whatever, typically will clear a lot faster. When you start dumping in $1,000, $2,500, whatever, then they start slowing down the process and making sure the money's good and it could be a hold up not only just with the brokerage but also with your bank too. They have their own rules, internal checks, things like that. So that's what the money going in and out, and these are additional details you need to think about when you are choosing a brokerage. And again, you're not really going to hear these kinds of things from the gurus, and the people out there that are trying to sell you their stuff, their indicators. I have this one indicator that can, change the way you trade and things like that. And if you wait a week, I promise you they'll probably have another indicator that will change the way you trade, and that's just their thing. So when it comes to the stuff that really matters, these are the kind of things you need to think about and know. That's why for the longest time, and it still is, financial advising is a whole profession because these are professionals. I was formerly an institutional trader. I was a financial advisor, and there's so much that people think they know or just don't know, and it's your job to help them navigate the market and these things and whatnot, and commission fees, structures, what have you. And when I see retail traders out there on their own trying to do these things, and they're making mistakes not because they're being foolish, but because they're getting bad advice or misinformation from the supposed gurus online, on YouTube or other places, Google and what have you. It upsets me because it's they are trying to do their best to be informed, to make the best decisions possible, and they're being set up for failure. So that's why here, on this series I've gone where away from the charts, where it's no suits, no ties, just hanging out and talking about real things that don't typically get covered or addressed if you went right now, like, hey, what are the top 10 things a retail trader should know? It's going to talk about EMA. It's going to talk about VWAP. It's going to talk about how to set up your charts. It's going to talk about certain securities you should trade, micro contracts, all kinds of things. It'll talk about everything except those basic foundational things that you should do before you even set up your chart. Like, if you have a bad personality and you can't self-regulate yourself, you're just gonna blow up your account. If you choose the wrong brokerage, and because they're showing you all these bells and whistles, and you don't know exactly what the relationship is between your bank, you, and this brokerage, and you don't really understand what you're paying. So when you see, like, oh my gosh, it's turned green, I've only traded this much, but my profit shows this, but your net is actually this, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was paying this much in commissions, or like, oh, I didn't know that this brokerage would flex the margin required to place trades at this time. Like, I was hoping to leverage this much, and I can't because the brokerage all of a sudden out of nowhere just changed the margin requirement, and now I can only do this much. If you don't know those things going in, that changes your whole plan. It means you're not experienced enough, and that's why financial advisors and things like that exist, right? But you can become more educated. You can, be aware of these things. You just have to find the right sources and the right people to share that with you. And oftentimes, it's not really out there, or if it claims to be, it's behind some kind of paywall, and even then, it's not complete. It's usually shuttling you to some kind of paid product or affiliation or something like that. And I have paid products too, but they are meant to help the retail trader. But a lot of the stuff I put out is free. I write articles, I post videos, I have a podcast that are meant to be educational. And because I just felt like there just wasn't enough good information out there to people, and not only that, but I just felt like this is some knowledge I need to put out there for folks. I was really, when I transitioned from institutional trader to retail trading, there wasn't a lot of information out there, and so I just wanted to kind of fill that void a little bit and actually put some authority behind it, and for people who are really trying. And I think, to me, I think it's a good thing. I enjoy doing it, but I guess I just caution folks when they're looking for resources and things like that. Just be careful. Yeah, I have paid products. I have, a book I wrote, and I'm developing some coursework, things like that. But in general, if you were to follow some of the things I have, my content, you can learn from that, just as well. There's more material for the paid stuff, but I guarantee you that the stuff that I provide for free it's legitimate and is helpful to those, if for beginner traders or for those who need a refresher. But that's me. Let me get off my soapbox. I just have a problem with snake oil setups. But that's kind of it. I just want to talk about some brokerage stuff because I feel like it's another topic that people don't really address when you're trying to, if you're a beginner trader and you're trying to figure stuff out that, you need to be aware of. And there's also, my daughter's waving to me from the kitchen. There's also the tax stuff, which that's a whole other thing. I just advise you to see whoever your tax professional is. There's some implications with that, and just be mindful of that. Your brokerage should provide documentation for you, your tax forms, so you can use those when the time comes. That's something else you should look into when looking at choosing your brokerage. is making sure that the tax forms are available. That's important. Other than that, I think that's it for today. It's raining, it's really muggy, and we'll just go with that. So remember, trading is risky, and just be careful out there with the information you gather, and I encourage you to do your best. Thank you.